What if I told you the real reason so many older men go quiet, stop pursuing, stop chasing, stop putting themselves out there has absolutely nothing to do with bitterness, nothing to do with a broken heart, nothing to do with giving up on love? What if the truth behind their silence was actually something far more powerful than any of that? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share is going to challenge almost everything you've been told about older men and why they pull back. Right now, there are thousands of men, good men, experienced men, who have stepped back from the dating world, gone quiet, pulled inward, and the world around them gets it completely wrong. People assume they must be wounded, that some woman did them dirty, that they closed themselves off out of pain or pride or fear. But that is almost never the story. The truth is something else entirely. And once you understand it, really understand it, you'll see it everywhere. We're going to get into exactly what's happening inside these men. But I want to plant something in your mind right now. There's a question that starts to surface in a man after enough years of living. A question he never thought to ask when he was younger. And that one question, when it finally arrives, changes everything about how he moves through the world. I'll tell you exactly what that question is. But first, let's talk about how a man gets there. Also, there's something coming later in this video about solitude, about what older men actually find when they finally have space to themselves. Most people assume they find loneliness. What they actually find is something almost no one expects. Keep going. If this is your first time here, this channel is for men who are ready to think differently. Real conversations. No surface-level advice. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what we share every week. Now let's get into it. This did not happen overnight for most of these men. It was not one bad relationship. It was not one terrible year that broke something inside them. It happened the way a season changes so slowly you almost don't notice it. Until one day you look up and everything is different. Year after year. Experience stacked on experience. And something inside these men quietly shifted. They started recognizing patterns they had seen before. They started understanding what brought calm into their lives and what quietly destroyed it. They learned that not every person who enters your world deserves to stay. And not every connection is worth bleeding for just to keep it alive. What makes this even more interesting is that most older men never announce this change. They don't post about it. They don't gather people around to explain themselves. They simply become different on the inside. And when someone notices and asks, they say something brief. Something like, "I'm just enjoying my own company right now." Or, "I'm focused on myself these days." And people hear those words and assume it's an excuse, a cover story for loneliness. A quiet kind of sadness, dressed up as contentment. But behind those simple words is something much larger. These men have reached the point where their inner peace feels too valuable to hand over carelessly. The time they have left feels too precious to spend in places that drain them. And their emotional energy, hard-won over decades, feels too valuable to waste on things that give nothing back. One of the biggest pieces of this puzzle is something most people would never guess. It is not anger. It is not resentment. It is the discovery that life becomes extraordinarily peaceful when the unnecessary noise is gone. And we're going to talk about exactly what that noise is and why younger men can't fully see it yet. But also coming up, I'm going to talk about something older men carry that they almost never speak about out loud. Something that quietly accumulates over years. And when I describe it, a lot of men watching this are going to feel something shift inside them. Keep watching. When men are young, so much of what drives them is external. They want to be chosen. They want to be wanted. They push hard to impress. They bend themselves in directions that don't feel natural. They put their own needs at the very bottom of the list, and they do it willingly, because they believe that's what love requires. But something changes as the years pass. An older man no longer measures his worth by how many people find him attractive or how much romantic attention he receives. What he starts to care about most after decades of living is something far quieter: his own mental and emotional steadiness. This is where a lot of confusion happens, especially for people who encounter these men and don't understand what they're seeing. They mistake emotional steadiness for coldness. They mistake a man choosing peace for a man who has stopped feeling. But many of these men still genuinely enjoy connection. What they have lost tolerance for is chaos. They have been through enough storms to understand exactly what a turbulent relationship costs, not just emotionally, but physically, in sleep, in health, in the quiet moments of the day that used to belong to them. A younger man often mistakes intensity for meaning. He thinks that if something feels electric and complicated and consuming, it must be real love. But an older man has already lived through enough of that electricity to know it does not reliably lead anywhere good. What he wants now is to wake up without dread. He wants a day that feels like his own. He wants people around him who make life lighter, not heavier. And once a man has tasted that kind of peace for long enough, a question starts to surface that he never thought to ask when he was younger. This is the question I told you about at the beginning, the question that changes everything. He begins asking, does this person genuinely improve my life, or does she quietly make it harder? And if he cannot answer that with an honest, clear yes, he no longer feels any urgency to pursue it. That single shift in how he frames things rewrites his entire approach to relationships. But there's something underneath even that. Something these men carry that rarely gets talked about. And it's not what you'd expect. If you're still with me, you need to hear this next part. For years, sometimes decades, many of these men gave without stopping. They showed up. They worked. They sacrificed in ways that often went completely unacknowledged. They fixed things, provided things, stayed through hard seasons, kept their mouths shut when they were struggling, and kept going when everything inside them wanted to rest. And somewhere along the way, many of them began to sense something, that all of that giving was simply expected, not appreciated, expected, like it was just part of their function, not a reflection of who they were or how much they cared. They began to feel like they were valued for what they could produce, not for who they actually were underneath all of it. Over time, that feeling does not turn into rage for most men. It turns into exhaustion. And there is a very meaningful difference between those two things. A man who is angry wants to fight. A man who is exhausted just wants to rest. Many older men reach that resting point quietly, without drama, without explanation. They just stop putting themselves where they don't feel seen. They stop pouring energy into places that never seem to notice the pouring. And from the outside, that can look like withdrawal, like coldness, like giving up. But what it actually is a man who finally decided that his own well-being matters as much as anyone else's. If this is landing for you, if you're seeing yourself or someone you know in what I'm describing, hit subscribe right now. This channel exists for men who are finally ready to name what they've been feeling for years. New content every week. And stay with me, because what I'm about to talk about next is something older men develop that younger men simply don't have yet. The ability to read a situation before it fully unfolds. Age brings something with it that cannot be shortcut. The ability to recognize what is coming before it arrives. An older man has seen enough relationship patterns to read a situation early. He knows what it feels like to be slowly worn down by someone who is always in crisis. He knows the exhaustion of walking on eggshells, of never knowing which version of a person you're going to get on any given day. He knows what it looks like when someone uses emotion as a weapon instead of a bridge. Things that he once dismissed as quirks or justified as passion now register clearly as warning signs. And he no longer has the patience or, frankly, the interest in staying around to see if things will eventually improve. Not because he has become harsh, but because he has become honest. He knows what certain patterns lead to. He has already lived the ending. This is why so many older men have no interest in drama. It is not a character flaw. It is hard-earned knowledge. Rather than ask whether someone excites them, they have learned to ask whether they feel calm around that person. That is the question that actually matters to them now. The moment a relationship starts feeling like a performance, like a test, like a constant negotiation for basic decency, many older men disengage. Not loudly, but completely. Earlier I told you there was something coming about solitude, about what older men actually find when they finally have real space to themselves. This is it. And for a lot of men watching, this is going to be the part that hits hardest. Perhaps the most quietly profound shift of all is this. Many older men discover, often to their own surprise, that they do not actually need a partner in order to feel like their life is whole. This is not something they expected to feel. For most of their lives, they were told by culture, by expectation, by everything around them that being alone meant something was wrong. That a man without a partner was somehow incomplete. But then they find themselves alone, either by circumstance or by choice. And instead of the emptiness they were told to expect, they find something else entirely. They find space. They find quiet. They find the freedom to move through their days exactly as they want to, without justifying any of it to anyone. By this stage of life, most of these men have already built something real. They have worked, provided, endured, learned, and grown. They have developed things they love, friendships that sustain them, routines that bring genuine satisfaction. They wake up, and the day belongs to them. The simplicity of that is not loneliness. For many of them, it is the closest thing to freedom they have ever known. And once a man falls in love with that freedom, once he realizes that solitude and peace can coexist, that being alone is not the same as being lonely, it becomes very difficult for anyone to convince him to trade it for something lesser. This brings us to something that grows slowly in a man, something that, for many of them, only fully arrives in their later years. And without it, nothing else I've described today makes any sense. An older man has usually developed a clear enough sense of his own value that he no longer needs external confirmation of it. He does not chase people who make him feel invisible. He does not stay in situations where he is taken for granted. He does not rationalize disrespect or pretend that unkindness is something other than what it is. He has worked too long, built too carefully, to invite someone into his life who treats what he has built carelessly. This is especially true when it comes to feeling used. An older man, who has spent his life building stability, is acutely sensitive to the feeling that someone values his resources more than they value him. The moment that sense arrives, so does his exit. Not with anger, with clarity. What all of this amounts to is something very simple, even if it took a lifetime to learn. Older men do not stop caring about women. They stop caring about chaos. They stop caring about one-sided effort. They stop caring about connections that cost everything and return almost nothing. They have arrived through decades of living at a quiet understanding of what actually makes life good. And it is not the presence of any warm body. It is peace. It is respect. It is honesty. It is the feeling of being genuinely known by someone who chooses you on the same terms you choose them. That is what they are holding out for. And because they have finally learned to be happy without it, they are no longer afraid to keep waiting until they find it, or to keep living well without it, if they never do. That is the truth beneath the quiet. Older men are not closed. They are not cold. They are not giving up. They are just no longer willing to lose themselves in order to feel less alone. They have finally understood, after everything life put them through, that real connection should add to a life, not slowly take it apart. And they are patient enough now, and honest enough now, to wait for the kind that actually does. If this video spoke to something real in you, subscribe. Share it with a man who needs to hear it. I put out these conversations every week for men who are done pretending everything is fine. Take care of yourself and keep going.